Now you will learn how to write to a text file in Java. So basically, in order to do file input and output, first we need to import stuff just like for user input. So just like in user input, we do java.util.scanner. In file input, we just do java.io.star like that for now. And then public static void main string array args. After that, we put throws IO exception. Don't worry about what throws IO exception means. Just put that whenever you use file input and output. So now, in order for file input and output, we need a file. So inside the java.io package, there's a class named file. Notice these classes are just like rectangle or like circle or like person or like string or scanner, except this one's just built into java.io. Let's name this file 1, and the way I make a file, new file, and then the file name. Now, if I run the program right now as it is, you see that there is no example1.txt right here. That thing doesn't exist. And the reason is that basically this creating a file object in Java doesn't make a file. However, when I make a print writer object, so first print writer, again another class that's built into the java.io, and I pass the file as an argument to the constructor of print writer. Now when I run, it generates an example1.txt, and of course it's just going to be empty because I didn't write anything in it. So then afterward, how do I write stuff in the file? Well, remember, in order to print to the system output, I need system.out.println stuff, right? Like that. And that would print to the system output. And basically the logic is system is a class, out is a static variable that of type printstream, and printstream contains an instance method of named println that takes a parameter and prints it. So basically, similarly, the print writer contains a method, instance method named println, so wr.println or print, both of those exist. So for example, abc wr.println abcd wr.println QWERTY. And then at the end, to save the file, we need wr.close. And now when I run over here in my example1.txt, I see that it successfully printed over here ABC, ABCD, and QWERTY. Of course, with the ABCD in the same line as ABC, because file output works basically the same way as system output. Now notice that when I make the file, it is created in the same folder as the level 2 less than 4 part 1.java. So basically in general, in most environments including Dr. Java and just doing it directly on terminal or command, basically the file usually is in the same folder as the source file or the source code, basically our code right here. Now, what happens if we run this again? Is it going to print it twice? Now, is it and then again and again? Well, it turns out no. Basically, whenever I write to a file over here, I overwrite the old file. So basically, I could type some bunch of random stuff right here, like that, and save. And then afterward, I run this program, and it overwrites that with my ABC, ABCD, QWERTY, like that. So each time, as soon as I run the program and come across this thing, basically it overwrites the file with a blank one. And then it prints the stuff and then saves it. Now, what happens if we just don't close it and then run? Well, now let's take a look at the file. It's empty. Basically, if you don't close a print writer, the file it writes to won't be saved. Basically, it'll be empty, which is usually not something you intend. There's no purpose to do this if you're not going to even save it. So remember, when you're done with a print writer, you should always close it. Here's an exercise. Prompt the user for an integer n, then write the integers from 1 to n to a file named 1to n.txt. So for this one, first we need to prompt the user for an integer n. So again, we need to import java.util.scanner. Then we can do scanner, I'm calling it something, equals new scanner system.in. And note that now that we've learned about classes, we can explain this. So scanner is a class that's built into java.util. Its constructor accepts a parameter, and basically what system.in is system is a class and in is a static variable. And basically we're just passing that variable as an argument to the scanner to make it read from the user. So basically now, prompt the user for an integer n. So first, print enter an integer, then afterward int n equals sc.next int, like that, which basically just prompts me for an integer. And then now write the integers from 1 to n to a file named 1to n.txt. So for this one, again, first we need a print writer in order to write to the file to begin with. And also we need a file. We do not need to create a file variable like that. We can actually just directly call the constructor like that and pass the result into the print writer. Because remember, constructors can be called without assigning them to variables. So then now let's just call this 1to n.txt, and now write the integers from 1 to n. Well, how would I do that? For loop from 1 to n. wr2.println I, and then don't forget wr2.close. And now when I run the program, enter an integer 7. All of a sudden I go to my same folder 1to n.txt, and it contains numbers 1 through 7 as shown. Now here's another question. What happens if I try writing to a file after it's closed? Well, it turns out if I try doing that, well, it's just not gonna work. So if I look at my 1to n.txt, it's still 1 through 7. I cannot just close and then expect to do something else. That's just not gonna work, no matter how many times I try. Now that we can write to files, it remains a question of how to read from files. So file input. So again, with both file input and output, we need throws IO exception and import java.io.start on line 1. And so like these two things. And then with file input, there are different ways. Right now, for now, we'll just use scanner, which is the simplest out of all ways. So basically, for file input, we need scanner. So something like this equals new scanner. And then instead of system.in, we just pass in a file object, new file. And then let's just say something like example1.txt. Something like that. So basically now we have a scanner that reads from example1.txt. And now how does this scanner work? Actually, it works exactly how the scanner with user input would work. So as you see over here, example1.txt contains, well, let's just make it contain stuff like what it contained earlier. And then now it works exactly the same way as a scanner would with user input. So for example, if I try printing sc2.next, then abc abcd, print sc2.nextInt, and it would cause an error because the next thing is not an int. Basically, it works exactly the same way as the scanner would with user input. Another thing, what if I read from a file that doesn't exist, like example2.txt? Actually, it'll cause an error. Basically, you cannot read from a file that doesn't exist, or a file that you do not have permission to access. Both of those are not allowed. So now, as an exercise, do the following. Assume that numbers.txt has an integer n on the first line. And then on the second line, it has n integers. So the program should read from numbers.txt, calculate the sum of the numbers, and write it to a file named sum.txt. So for this one, it would probably be a good idea to create something called numbers.txt. So we could create this by hand, or we could just create this using a program. So basically we have our numbers.txt file right here. And now we need to read from it. So scanner sc3 equals new scanner, new file, numbers.txt, int n equals sc3.nextInt. And note that you do not need to prompt the user for anything. Like you do not need to enter an integer here because it's already in the file. You do not need to prompt the user for anything. So then now on the first line it has an integer n, so I read that. On the second line it has n integers, so I just use a loop. Like that. And of course afterward I need to calculate the sum of the numbers. So basically I need to keep track of the sum plus equals u, like that, inside the loop. Then write it to a file named sum.txt. So again, print writer wr3 equals new print writer, new file sum.txt, wr3.println sum, then afterward wr3.close. And now when we run this, it should work. So our numbers.txt contains these 7 numbers. So 1 + 3 + 5 + 3 + 4 + 2 + 8 is 26. and then the sum.txt contains 26. So our program works as intended. Now, suppose that we don't know how many numbers are in the file. So basically, we know that numbers2.txt has a bunch of numbers, but there's no indicator. We know that there's 7 numbers right here, but Java doesn't, because our Java program is going to read the things from left to right in here, line by line. There's only one line here. But anyway, the point is Java reads the files in order, so there's no way of determining how much numbers there are total. So therefore, how do we do this? So again, we need our scanner, just like from last time. Of course, make sure you change the file name as well. So then, now, there is no int n. So how do we do this? Well, there's a convenient method in scanner named hasNext. So while sc4.hasNext. And basically what hasNext checks is that in our text file right here, for example, if I'm at the beginning, it's true. If I covered like 3 numbers, it's true. If I covered 6 numbers, it's true. If I covered all 7 numbers, however, it's false because there's nothing left. That's what hasNext is. So while there's something left, I can accept as input. And of course, we need to keep track of the sum just like last time. And then, well, we'll just print the sum to sum2.txt. So like that. And now when we run the program, it should work. So as shown here, the sum of the numbers is 32. However, over here, it's 32. So our program works as expected.